Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
Hello and welcome to a special detour episode of Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. I'm Dave Rettelberger, and along with my good friend and co-host Paul Hooper, today's episode is a little spooky, a little different. It's a detour or a side trip, a mini bonus episode where we take a single serving look at something fun happening in the live entertainment industry. Paul, will you be so kind as to introduce our very appropriate for Spooky Month guests?
Well, of course.
Do the whole podcast in that voice, please.
I know, right?
The whole
I don't
thing.
think I can sustain that accent. But yeah, we're joined by our friends at the Louisville Palace, located in Louisville, Kentucky. And they're joining us to kind of tell us about some of the unique things about the venue, some spooky things, some different ghosts that are visiting and have some stories. So we're here with Jill Zoll, who's the box office manager, and Caitlin McCoy, who's the logistics manager, but also refers to herself as the spooky expert or resident ghost expert for the venue. So welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us.
No, thanks for having us.
So, you guys, before we get into, the spooky part, tell us a little bit about the venue. Give us just a general overview of what its places in the community and its history.
Yeah, so originally on the stretch of street that we're on South 4th Street. It used to be kind of a walking district with lots of different movie theaters around. Our theater opened on September 1st, 1928. The gentleman that built it, the architect, was named John Eberson. He is a very well-known theater architect. He has, I think, over hundreds of theaters throughout the country, not so much these days. A lot of them have closed and or were torn down, but he was very big into atmospheric theaters. So when you go and watch a movie, it makes you feel like you're watching it outside. And we were kind of plopped right down in the theater district in the downtown Louisville area. So our theater specifically is the last one, I think, standing in the surrounding area. A lot of them have become, unfortunately, parking garages. There is one down the street that is currently used as storage. So we were lucky enough that we did survive a closure in the 1970s. And then it was refurbished by a local architect named John Siegel and was reopened in the 1990s. And it started out as just kind of still running some movies and some local theater and some local shows. And now we are predominantly a concert venue and destination downtown.
Having visited the theater many times, I first off love it. It's it truly is. And I've been to a number of venues, I've been very fortunate to go to a number of venues all over the country. And Louisville Palace, I think it should be on everyone's bucket list. I think it's so unique. The architecture, the design. If you're listening to this right now, not if you're driving, but pull out your phone and Google Louisville Palace and look at it. And it's just so wild. And especially if you all could speak to it, maybe this, I don't know if there's any of the ghost stories tied into this, but some of that architecture and the faces that are in the ceiling in the lobby, which I've heard numerous stories about, how there's some hidden kind of iconic celebrities, like maybe there's a Beethoven, but also I heard there's one of them has their eyes closed. Maybe the person who carved it has their face hidden in there. What are some of the really unique, funky things that people will find if they visit it?
I absolutely agree with you. Every time I walk into that venue, I get chills and just a feeling of just privilege of being able to work there. Really thank all the gentlemen, the Johns in particular, that helped bring it to us, and feel very protective of it, of keeping their their legacy on. In fact, John Siegel is one of the hidden faces in the Faces lobby. He is the gentleman that we give a lot of credit to having this building still in the glory that it is. He spent a lot of time trying to restore it to its natural glory, and I think everyone can agree he did an incredible job, because it really does still look a lot like some of the older pictures that you'll find from back in the day when it was originally opened. A lot of terracotta plaster work around the building. Yeah.
Yeah, the style that John Eberson went with when he built the place was Spanish Baroque. So it is very over the top, very detail oriented. There is not a crack or crevice that doesn't have a detail, added on top of a detail. It's like a sculpture on top of a sculpture. Lots of color. It's like dark and moody, but also very elegant and bright. And it's something that even pictures I don't think do it justice. John Eberson's also a hidden face on the ceiling. Those faces are, a lot of them repeat. You have your Beethoven and your Bach and your Aristotle and, some of those kinds of folks. But then story goes that one night when John Eberson was out of the building and it was being built, his staff really loved working with him. So they took one of the faces off of the ceiling and put his in its place. And then cool. When it shut down and went through its renovation, and John Siegel being a local, and up until recently, he recently passed away. I don't even think it's been a year. He was a season ticket holder. He was very near and dear to our hearts with the venue. So he also has his face on the ceiling as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then if you go into the theater itself, people think that the Faces lobby is exquisite. And then you walk into the theater and it's like, it just, there's always more to look at. And that, like I said, it's an atmospheric theater. So you feel like you're outside. Back in the day, there used to be a cloud machine. So if you look up at the ceiling, there are constellations on the ceiling. And allegedly, it's the star map of the first day that the venue opened, September 1st, 1928.
That is so
and then
cool.
there used to be, to be clouds. And so I know I've talked to some.
We don't have to say allegedly. We can spread that rumor. That is exactly what that star map is.
That's exactly right. Yes.
That's exactly. That's what I'm telling everyone.
Hey, I confidently tell people. And then you never know.
All right. So you start working there. Before you got the job, are you aware of the haunted history, or at what point does somebody break this news to you once you've got the gig?
Well, I'll be honest. I am a lifelong resident and have attended the Palace, events of the Palace, and had actually never even really fully considered that it was haunted until I began working here. And it's more of a feeling that you get when you walk in the first time and get a tour when there's no show going on. You're like, there's someone watching us, isn't there? And that's when I got told, yes, this is haunted. If you treat the ghost right, be respectful, you don't have anything to worry about. It's the people who aren't always aware of what they're doing that might be the people that cause the spirits to scare them a little. But if you're just
gotta
if
leave
you're
that
nice
ghost
to them,
light on. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah. The theater ghost light is a definite thing, and we utilize it here. But yeah, that's how I found out originally, and I could not believe I'd gone all this time without realizing or even thinking about it. And the hauntings do go back ages. It's definitely not a recent phenomenon. But what's kind of cool to me is that there's definitely more ghosts that have come to the Palace as we've been open. A lot of people have found a home here, and they feel very comfortable here.
Yeah, why wouldn't they? It's beautiful.
Speaking on my end of things, I didn't grow up in Louisville. I actually grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I walked in for the first time and was like, wow, this is beautiful and this is stunning. And I was, like she said, it's a privilege to work in the Palace. But I think for me, I'm one of those just energy people where you can just kind of feel that like something's a little off. For me personally, it was a lot of, walking into a room and feeling like someone had just left, like you just missed somebody. or catching shadows out of the corner of your eye. Like when you turn a corner, you see something else like just turning the next corner. And I kind of just ignored it for a while. But the longer I was here, and I feel like the more my role increased, and as odd as it sounds, it's like the more that they became familiar that I'm sticking around, I think the more comfortable they got with me, because I'm out of, I think the two of us, I'm the one that's had the most spooky experiences.
Lucky.
She's definitely had the most alone time in the building, because I will say, as much as I trust the ghosts, I try and leave them be a lot. So I try not to spend a lot of time there by myself. And if I do, I'm talking a lot to them because yeah.
And then I just like to find trouble. So
or trouble finds her, you know.
So let me run through some of the ghosts that are rumored that we've heard about. They're from the Louisville Palace Theater. There's the faceless woman wearing like clothing from the 1940s that has been spotted climbing the stairs in the mezzanine lobby. A man in 1930s attire in the balcony area who vanishes after being approached. The one that creeps me out, the sound of a young child giggling heard in the bathroom just beyond the ladies' parlor. A ghost of a projectionist said to haunt the projection booth after having a heart attack on the job. So when you say you've had some spooky encounters, are you just hearing sounds and things, or what have you actually experienced?
So I think out of all of us, everyone pretty much experiences sounds and kind of just like feeling uneasy, but there are probably only about 3 of us that have actually witnessed legitimate full-bodied apparitions. I know personally our general manager, he started in facilities, and he can speak to the lady in gray. His story with that is, I believe, within the first like 6 months of him working here, he was fixing a seat in the orchestra level, and he looked up and saw a woman in gray with a high collar, and she was clutching a playbill, and she was walking, more so floating, down aisle 1 to her seat. And then as of, I think, like a year ago, he saw her again in the same place.
Oh, geez. Oh, God. I'm getting chills.
But it's funny because, I've heard from our production manager that he's also seen her, and he's the one that's seen her going up the grand staircase, and she's in that high collared dress, lady in gray, clutching that playbill. So they've seen the same exact thing, just in 2 different places, but they've seen it repetitively, which only confirms that it has to be true.
Yeah, that's the lady in gray is definitely is one who's been around for a while. And so when I hear the old stories of it, having talked to the people on our staff that have seen her, our GM Johnny and Scobie, our production manager, those are people that I trust.
Yeah, you've met him before.
Yeah, Scobie is another fixture. But those are people I definitely trust. And when you, unfortunately, we couldn't get Johnny with us here today, but the stories he has of her, it's just absolutely convincing that she hangs around. And but yeah, she clearly needs to find her seat. That's the one thing, is we need to get someone that can find her seat.
Yeah.
I've been watching, which is kind of fun, like, and maybe tying into that, are there any like superstitions that you all have surrounding those? Because I don't know if you're watching Only Murders in the Building, but it's an excellent show. Well, okay. Well, I won't spoil this. It doesn't really spoil any of the latest season, but a lot of it takes place in a theater, and it really is not tied to the plot at all. But there's this apparent ghost that haunts the theater, and they talk about all these fun superstitions they have of sweeping the floor of the theater and doing this in the theater, and kind of like trying to make sure the ghost is on your side for opening night. And like, are there any fun superstitions you all have that it's like, okay, we need to make sure we tidy this up for this ghost, or they like this a certain way, or maybe we don't enter this room after this certain time?
It's actually funny you mentioned that. There are 2 instances I can think of that are like that. When I started, there was always this, I call it a joke because I never knew if anyone was serious about it, but it's, you have to say goodbye to the ghost if you're the last one out of the building. And as you're leaving and you're about to set the alarm, if you don't say good night ghosts, they won't allow you to set the alarm. And I personally have experienced this. And my husband, prior to us being married, actually worked at the venue. And the very first night that he was set to lock up by himself, he called me and he's like, I cannot get like, I can't get this alarm to set. And I was like, well, did you walk around the doors and just make sure that, like, he's like, I've checked this venue top to bottom, left to right. I've checked every door. I've opened and closed them, making sure nothing's ajar that is keeping us from being able to leave. I was like, are you sure you're not moving because it's motion censored? And he's like, no, I'm not. And I was like, okay, well, and then I just kind of paused and I was like, did you say good night to the ghosts? And he's like, haha, that's really funny. So he calls somebody and he's like, hey, I can't get the alarm to set. And they're like, oh, well, we'll be down. We'll see what we can do to fix it. And then he calls me back and he's like, I'm getting you on the phone because I want to prove to you that it's not the ghosts. And he said, and on the phone said, good night, ghosts. And then I hear him put in his PIN and then the alarm beeps. And I have never heard that man scream as loud as he did. And I could hear him running. He's like, oh, heck no. Yes. And he burst out the back door. He's like, absolutely. So, I took it as a joke when I first started, but it's something I continue to do just because I've had so many experiences where I'm not allowed to leave. So I always make it a habit to say good night and thank you, and then I leave.
Yes. Yeah.
Not a bad choice.
Yeah, I don't know if it's superstitious, but that's definitely what I do too. So when I come in, I'm like, hey guys, I'm here. I'm just here I needed to turn off the lights that someone forgot, and I'll leave you all alone. It's okay. And that's when you get, like, sometimes you'll get the flicker of lights in response, which is kind of cool. I'm like, all right, I got you. We're all good. and yeah, good night. Have a good night.
How many ghosts are there? I know Dave mentioned a few that we've heard about, but is there like a count? Are there any we missed? What is there?
Ones that we know
4 or 5?
So we have Lady in Gray. We have the projectionist, which we recently have gotten more information on him. We have the balcony ghost, who we refer to as Bernard. We have Fred, who is a former employee, and we have the children. Yeah. And so that's 5 that we know of. Actually 6. We recently also discovered that one of our former general managers also likes to hang around. If you guys didn't know this, as of today, Hulu has released a TV show called Living for the Dead, and we happen to be a featured venue on that show.
No joke.
Yeah, so this is actually
as of today.
Yes,
as of today.
Wow.
And so they came in March, and I, we got a call. I work in special events, so we got a call, and it was, hey, we want to rent out the venue and do a ghost tour or ghost show. And we're so used to getting TV shows interested, but, like, it doesn't usually ever pan out. So we're like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then, like, the more we talk to them, we're like, oh, like, this is actually going to happen. This is really cool. And so my boss was like, hey, you love ghosts. You love staying up late. Here you go. You get to stay overnight in the palace. So she gave me the job of staying overnight in the palace with this crew, and they were the nicest group of people. And they actually did, like, ghost testing and hunting, and they had, recording devices all over the place, and we turned off all the lights, even pulled the power so nothing was going to accidentally get picked up on a microphone or anything like that. And it was such a wild experience because I know we both personally somehow got involved in this episode, and they uncovered so much about, like, our needs and our lives just by doing the ghost hunting.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's definitely an episode you need to watch, but they have confirmed that the projectionist did in fact die in the projection room. That was always a story that so the story that we had, the story goes that I always tell people is there's a projectionist that was very passionate about his job, and he worked 7 days a week, and he was always dressed because it was a theater back then. You dressed really nicely, but the theater doesn't have air conditioning back then. So you can only envision how hot it could get. And allegedly he had, breathing problems and potentially suffered a heart attack. And then he ended up passing away up there. There's an additional portion to the story that says that when the EMTs brought him down from the projection room, it's more of a ladder than it is stairs. So it's hard to get someone down it's hard to get up and down there in general, but, like, envision having to get somebody out on, like, a gurney. So he could have potentially been dropped, and that is what killed him. But we learned through the show that there's actually a gentleman who used to work here, Charles, who actually had heard the story as well back when he worked here when it was a theater. And he did confirm. We assumed that Bernard was the projectionist, which I'll get into Bernard as well. But this gentleman's name's actually Dutch. And if you watch the episode, I don't want to give away spoilers, but you kind of learn that he likes things a very particular way. And if he doesn't have, things in the way that he wants them, that's when he makes his presence known and makes you kind of feel like you don't.
He's just type A. He's like anyone else in live events,
Yes. He has and he will let you know that you are not doing it the Dutch way.
That's probably my future. I think my coworkers would agree with that, as I'll haunt them and say, that design for that flyer does not look how it's supposed to do. You need to nudge the text over to the left.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we found out that David has since kept an eye on it. David was the general manager here when hired me, and passed away unfortunately in 2019 right before COVID. That's why I have the year and some people that were a lot of us were really close with him, but we have a painter on staff or kind of on call named Tina, and she had some help from a girl named Jen who has worked at the theater many times too. And they were in a room doing some touch-up work for us, and they were talking, just said something about David, and automatically the lights flickered, and they both stopped and were like, okay. And they're both believers, I will say. And so they were like, okay, cool. We got it. So you're here with us, huh, David? And they flickered again, and they were just like, all right, cool.
Space right now.
Yeah, and
I'm having trouble with all of this.
Yeah. And I that was the one thing, is that like he was again general manager, live entertainment, theater background, type A, really cared about the theater and everything, and my big thing was always like, am I doing it the way David would want it? And that it's on the episode that was the thing that we found out about, and it was really cool. It was a really awesome experience, but it leaves me with very little doubt that the spirits are there and they are watching over the building and over us. And we just need to pay attention to them.
We have one of our arenas here in Columbus, Nationwide Arena, is built on the site of an old estate pen with obviously a lot of history. And so the public kind of embraced that, and like somebody, I don't know who it is, has an account that maybe it is the ghost of Nationwide Arena has its own account on Twitter/X. And I wonder how have you guys embraced this with the public? Are you doing like any haunted tours, anything like that?
Yeah, that's been something in the last several years. We've tried to do show some Halloween style movies, of course, and we have incorporated some haunted tours. It wasn't something like we had even really necessarily considered, I don't think, until about maybe 5-7 years ago, that people actually would want to do that. I don't know why it hadn't dawned on us beforehand. And Caitlin was nice enough to kind of take on that project, and which is great because it's helped us learn a lot of the history of the building in general, and just kind of honor the people that are here and that have stayed with the building. It's given us a chance to honor them, which is I think really important to me in particular.
We definitely don't want to dissuade people from visiting the venue. So it sounds like the ghosts are nice, but also it's really a gorgeous venue. It is. I mean, you all would agree, but it's kind of a legendary underplay too, where you'll have a lot of artists that will play down into the palace. I know when I was at the arena, we would have the Avett brothers every couple of years, and then they decided to do like a 3-night stand at the palace instead, which I thought was amazing. So they would have, the 3 concert posters that were all kind of conjoined. I mean, it's kind of known for a lot of artists wanting to play it, because I think once they see it, they understand how iconic it is and how gorgeous it is. And I think the history and the ghosts and everything just plays into this like really fun tale that is the Louisville Palace.
Yeah, give us some shout outs if somebody wants to follow you guys on Instagram or anywhere on social media. Check out the website. Give us all the plugs here.
Yeah, it's basically LouisvillePalace.com. This is the website of Louisville Palace, or at Louisville Palace for
I think all
X,
the social medias.
Yeah, X, Twitter / Facebook / Instagram, all those fun ones. So follow us.
What's the name of the show on Hulu one more time?
Oh, the Hulu show is called Living for the Dead, and it is a Hulu original that was specifically made for Halloween. And we're episode number 5, The Working Ghost.
That is awesome. I'm going to watch that tonight.
Yeah, and Paul, there's actually another Lexington connection with that show as well. One of the cast members is actually from Lexington, Kentucky.
Cool.
So, yeah, there's all kinds of little connections that made that a really special experience that I hope everyone in the area takes a chance at. And then, once you see that, then maybe you come and take one of our tours and get a little more in-depth experience. Or just come to a show. You don't have to do the tour. If you don't want to do the tour, you can just come to a show sometime.
There you go, right? Hey, thank you guys so much for sharing this with us. What a great story. That was really, really cool stuff. I appreciate you guys sharing and loved hearing about your adventures. And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this special detour episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews. It keeps the ghosts happy and helps others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Good night, ghosts, and happy Halloween.
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.